It was almost 10 at night, and directly under the Deepwater horizon were 4 men in a fishing boat: Albert Andre, Dustin King, Ryan Chasen, and Wesley Borg.
When I heard the gas coming out, I knew exactly what it was almost immediately.
When the gas cloud was descending on you, what was that like?
It was scary, and when I looked at it, it burned my eyes, and I knew we had to get out of there.
You could tell what it was?
I knew it was methane.
On the rig, Mike Williams was reaching for a door to investigate the engine noise.
These are 3-inch thick steel fire-rated doors with 6 stainless steel hinges supporting them on the frame. As I reached for the handle, I heard this awful hissing noise, this whoosh, and at the height of the hiss, a huge explosion. The explosion literally rips the door from the hinges, impacts me and takes me to the other side of the shop. And I'm up against the wall when I finally come around with a door on top of me. And I remember thinking to myself, you know, this is it. I'm gonna die right here.
The men on the fishing boat had a camera.
Look at the water on fire.
I began to crawl across the floor. As I got to the next door, it exploded and took me, the door, and slid me about 35 feet backwards again and planted me up against another wall. At that point, I actually got angry. I was mad at the doors. I was mad that these fire doors that are supposed to protect me are hurting me. And at that point, I made a decision. I'm going to get outside. I may die out there, but I'm going to get outside. So I crawl across the grid work of the floor and make my way to that opening where I see the light. I made it out the door, and I thought to myself, I've accomplished what I set out to accomplish. I made it outside. At least now I can breathe. I may die out here, but I can breathe.
Williams couldn't see. Something was pouring into his eyes, and that's when he noticed a gash on his forehead.
I didn't know if it was blood. I didn't know if it was brains. I didn't know if it was flesh. I didn't know what it was. I just knew I was in trouble. At that point, I grabbed a life jacket. I was on the aft lifeboat deck. There were 2 functioning lifeboats at my disposal right there. But I knew I couldn't board them. I had responsibilities.
His responsibility was to report to the bridge, the rig's command center.
I'm hearing alarms. I'm hearing radio chatter, mayday, mayday, mayday. We've lost propulsion. We've lost power. We have a fire. Man overboard on the starboard forward deck.
Multiple personnel on water. Any person in the vicinity for help will be really appreciated.
Williams says that on the bridge, he watched them try to activate emergency systems.
The BOP that was supposed to protect us and keep us from the blowout obviously had failed, and now the emergency disconnect to get us away from this fuel source has failed. We have no communications to the BOP.
And
I see one of the lifeboats in the water, and it's motoring away from the vessel. I looked at the captain and asked him, I said, what's going on? He said, I've given the order to abandon ship.
Every Sunday, they had practice lifeboat drills and the procedure for making sure that everyone was accounted for. But in the panic, all that went to hell. The lifeboats were leaving. They're leaving without you?
They have left without the captain and without knowing that they had everyone that had survived all this on board. I've been left now by 2 lifeboats. And I look at the captain and I said, what do we do now? By now, the fire is not only on the derrick, it's starting to spread to the deck. At that point, there were several more explosions, large, intense explosions.
What do they feel like, sound like?
It just take your breath away type explosions, shake your body to the core explosions, take your vision away from the percussion of the explosions.
About 8 survivors were left on the rig. They dropped an inflatable raft from a crane, but with only a few of the survivors on the raft, it was launched, leaving Williams, another man, and a crewwoman named Andrea.
I remember looking at Andrea and seeing that look in her eyes of she had quit, she had given up. I remember her saying, I'm scared. And I said, it's okay to be scared, I'm scared too. She said, what are we gonna do? I said, we're going to burn up or we're going to jump.
How far is it to the sea?
Maybe 90 feet, 100 feet. It's a long ways.
In the middle of the night, with blood in his eyes, fire at his back, and the sea 10 stories below, Williams made his choice.
I remember closing my eyes and saying a prayer and asking God to tell my wife, little girl, that Daddy did everything he could. And if I survive this, it's for a reason. I made those 3 steps, and I pushed off the end of the rig. And I fell for what seemed like forever. A lot of things go through your mind.
The rest of Mike Williams' story and a look at the company responsible for the disaster when we come back. With a life jacket, Mike Williams, the chief electronics technician aboard the Deepwater Horizon, jumped feet first off the deck and away from the inferno. He had witnessed key events before the disaster, but if he was going to tell anyone, he would have to survive a 10-story drop into the sea.
I went down way below the surface, obviously. And when I popped back up, I felt it. I felt like, okay, I've made it. But I feel this god-awful burning all over me. And I'm thinking, am I on fire? You know, I just don't know. So I start doing the only thing I know to do, swim. I got to get away from this thing. I could tell I was floating in oil and grease and diesel fuel. I mean, it was just the smell. And I remember looking under the rig and seeing the water on fire. And I thought, what have you done? You were dry and you weren't covered in oil up there. Now you've jumped and you've made this and you've landed in oil. The fire's going to come across the water and you're going to burn up. And I thought, that you just got to swim harder. So I swam and I kicked and I swam and I kicked and I swam as hard as I could until I remember not feeling any more pain. And I didn't hear anything. And I thought, well, I must have burned up because I don't feel anything. I don't hear anything. I don't smell anything. I must be dead. Then I remember a real faint voice of, over here, over here. And I thought, what in the world is that? And the next thing I know, he grabbed my life jacket and flipped me over into this small open-bowed boat. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know where he'd come from. I didn't care. I was now out of the water.
Williams' survival may be critical to the investigation. We took his story to Dr. Bob B., a professor of engineering at the University of California, Berkeley. Last week, the White House asked B. to help analyze the Deepwater Horizon accident. B. investigated the Columbia Space Shuttle disaster for NASA and the Hurricane Katrina disaster for the National Science Foundation. B's voice never completely recovered from the weeks that he spent in the flood in New Orleans, but as the White House found, he's among the nation's best. He's investigated more than 20 offshore rig disasters.
Mr. Williams comes forward with these very detailed elements from his viewpoints